This video will act as an introduction for what will soon be a series and playlist. You're all about to get blitzkrieged with 31 videos already recorded of readings from Clark Ashton Smith, an author with whom I have been feeling a particular kinship. Actually, the same's happened with Franz Kafka, but that's another story. For those of you who do not yet know him, he was an author to whom the terms fantasy, science fiction, and horror all apply equally, and he was a contemporary of H.P. Lovecraft. The two of them wrote regularly for some of the same magazines. In fact, the two became good friends through letters to one another, each mutually admiring the other, but they've never had the chance to meet in person. In fact, Lovecraft's letters to Smith have him acting like a blushing fanboy after having been sent a book of his poetry, even expressing that Smith was a far better poet than he could ever hope to be. Clark Ashton Smith was primarily a poet, having got his start by writing poetry and locally famous for it, somewhat famous, in the California town of Auburn, where he was raised. There is a street there which is named for him called Poet Smith Drive. Later in life, he also became a sketch artist and sculptor. Now, I personally love both authors' work, but happen to prefer Clark Ashton Smith's for reasons I hardly know how to describe. The guy was known for having an incredible memory and absorbed everything in the Auburn Public Library, some maintaining that it was literally everything in that library. I was randomly and very suddenly stricken with the idea of doing this, of reading him for you all, by the realization that I think I had only ever read a few stories before of his and had remembered them vaguely, but remembering that I loved the particulars of how he made words flow. So I looked up a list of all his known works and then looked up each of those on YouTube to see which had not yet been read, if any, and was surprised to find that many had not. So, my friends, I present to you here all I've read inside of 1 week, a bit obsessively, which is everything not yet read on YouTube, at least as of the Ides of March 2023. Like Baskin-Robbins, the following are 31 flavors of Clark Ashton Smith, all of them very weird. Most are a mix of cosmic horror and fantasy, though some are simply adventure stories involving interplanetary travel. A couple are very brief, dark comedies, and one of which surprised me with its whimsical and witty tones akin to The Princess Bride. At least one of Smith's earliest stories from his teen years went into an erotic magazine, or what passed for such in the Edwardian age. A very short one of those will be included in the mix. I won't mention which one. I hope to reel in some new fans. I hope I have done the man justice. I had immense pleasure in actualizing his stories with my voice, which at times was challenging, being that Clark Ashton Smith's incredible memory afforded him very natural use of the broadest vocabulary, which means words often arrive that I had not heard in a very long time, and many I've only ever read and never heard spoken, never heard aloud. Whenever possible, I will show in each video the magazine cover in which a given story had appeared, but sometimes stories were not published until well after his death, or certain magazine covers simply were not available. And in those cases, I will use later editions, like when it reappears elsewhere. It figures Clark Ashton Smith was born on Friday the 13th. It just figures, of August 1893, and died August 14th, 1961. He died believing himself to have failed in his art. I wish I could personally tell him in my own words that, "Oh, you so did not. Give it time, brother." Now, you will find some ridiculous dialogue in his works and some amusing depictions of the relatively near future, as imagined from between the 1920s and the 1950s. But his stories' situations begin in strange alien worlds and get ever stranger and more alien from there. And that's the whole point, more than anything, just to get us steeped in something as extraordinary as it is alien, to give us a new literary experience. The atmosphere into which he ushers us overrides all else, and it's as beautiful as it is weird. I strongly suggest, if you like these stories and are inclined to learn more about him, find a documentary about Clark Ashton Smith called Clark Ashton Smith, the Emperor of Dreams. I will leave you now with the image of a plaque which is affixed to the outer wall of the Auburn Public Library, where he spent so much of his time, a place he knew intimately in the town where he spent 50 years of his life. Upon this plaque, dedicated to him, of course, are engraved the words from his story, "The Sorcerer Departs." It reads, "I pass, but in this lone and crumbling tower, builded against the burrowing seas of chaos, my volumes and my philters shall abide, poisons more dear than any mithridate, and spells far sweeter than the speech of love. Half-shapen dooms shall slumber in my vaults, and in my volumes cryptic runes that shall outblast the pestilence, outgnaw the worm when loosed by alien wizards on strange years under the blackened moon and paling sun." Please join me. I will see you very soon.